Hey guys, so now that you understand the core fundamentals of JavaScript and the DOM, you should be able to start writing small applications. So we're going to take many of the things that we've learned so far and we're going to create a couple small projects with them. So this project is going to be a loan calculator. This is something that an actual accountant could use to quickly show their clients how long it would take to pay a loan back, how much interest would be, how much the total amount would be, and so on. All right, so there is some math involved, and I'll be the first one to tell you that I'm horrible at math. I had to look up the calculations and the formula to get these results, but that's the thing. You can look up any formula or calculation you want and then implement it into your application. So, for instance, if you want to build a temperature Fahrenheit to Celsius converter or a currency converter, you should be able to do that just by Googling the correct algorithm or calculation. So you don't actually have to be really good at math to build these things. All right, you just need to know where to put the formula in your code and then from what fields, input fields, to get the correct numbers from. All right, so let's go ahead and try this out. So it takes in three things: the loan amount, the annual interest, and the years to repay. All right, so let's say we want a $10,000 loan and we want a 2% interest and we want 2 years to pay it back. So we'll calculate. We have this little spinner and then we get the results. All right, so you can see that the total payment would be this right here. We'd have a monthly payment of this and total interest would be this. All right, and now the spinner graphic I showed you, I'm first going to show you how to build this without that, and then I'm going to show you how to include that. It doesn't actually take that long to calculate, but it gives the user that feeling that something's going on, and it's just good for the UI experience. You don't actually need it. We could get it 2 seconds faster and not show that graphic, but I think that it gives the user that feeling that it's actually calculating. All right, so it's all about user experience. Now, if what you put in here doesn't make sense, if we just leave everything blank, it'll calculate. It'll give us an error, and then we're going to set the error to disappear after 3 seconds. Okay, we're going to use a window method called set timeout to do that, which we haven't talked about yet, but I think it's easy enough to teach you that method in this project. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. All right, guys, so the first thing we're going to do is create our UI, our user interface. Now, you don't have to go through this if you don't want to, if you don't feel like watching me type HTML and you don't want to type it and you just want to get the project files. You can just take the files from this lecture and move on. But for those of you that actually want to start from scratch and build out the UI, we're going to be using Bootstrap, okay, Bootstrap version 4. And it's going to be pretty simple. As you saw, we're just going to have a single form in the middle of the page, and we're going to use Bootstrap cards to give it that border and stuff. All right, so we're going to use the CDN. So if we go to Get Started here, it'll give us the CDN, but we're actually going to use the starter template. So let's create a new folder anywhere you want. I'm going to create it on my desktop, and I'm going to call this Loan Calculator. And then we're going to open this with Visual Studio Code. We'll just snap that over there. All right, and we can make this a little smaller. And now we're going to have to create just a couple files. So index.html. And we want our JavaScript file, which is app.js, or you can call it whatever you want. And then we're just going to need the loading image, which I'm going to create a folder right here called img. And I'm going to bring that image in. You'll have it in your resource files. So let's see, that's not right. Yes, it is. So let's see, downloads. It's called loading.gif or GIF, however you want to say it. And I'm just going to copy this, and I'm going to bring it into that image or that img folder. All right, so now we have all of our files. So let's go to our index.html. Let's grab this starter template right here. And this just includes the CDN for Bootstrap. It also includes the JavaScript file for Bootstrap, and then its two dependencies, which are jQuery and Popper.js. Okay, so you need that if you're going to use any Bootstrap JavaScript, which we're not. We probably don't need this, but it's good to have just in case you want to expand later on or include something from Bootstrap JavaScript. All right, so let's go ahead and go into the body here, get rid of that H1. I'm just going to close that, make this a little bigger. And we're going to start. All right, so the body itself, I want to have a dark background, so I'm actually going to give it a Bootstrap class of bg-dark. All right, so I'm going to save this, and then I'm going to open this with Live Server by right-clicking and going to Open with Live Server. All right, and if you don't have Live Server installed, you can go to Extensions in VS Code and just search for Live Server and install it. All right, or you can just open your HTML file. So inside the body here, we're going to have a container. So a container in Bootstrap just moves everything to the middle, adds some margin auto, so it has margin on the sides. And then inside the container, we're going to use the grid system. So we're going to do a row. And if you're interested in Bootstrap 4, I do have a Bootstrap 4 course on Udemy. I'm sure that many of you have already taken it, and you should know all about this. But I'm not going to explain every single little thing about Bootstrap. So inside the row here, we want a 6-column div. So I'm going to say call-md-6. Okay, and then we're also going to add a class of mx-auto, which is going to push it into the middle. It's going to give it margin auto on both sides, on the right and the left. All right, so inside here, we're going to create a card class. It's also going to have a class of card body. I also want everything to be centered, so I'm going to give it a class of text center. And then I'm also going to give it a class of mt-5, which gives it some margin on the top. All right, so let's go ahead and save that, and we should have our card right in the middle. And even if the browser's bigger, it should stay in the middle because we have that MX Auto class. All right, so from here, what we want to do is add our heading. So it's going to be an H1, and I'm going to give it a class of heading, which we'll use to grab onto it later on. We're also going to give it a class of display-5, which is a Bootstrap class, makes it a certain size, and then some padding on the bottom, so PB-3. All right, and then in this H1, we're just going to say loan calculator. And save, and there we go. All right, so now we want to create our form. So we're going to have a form, and it's going to have an ID of loan-form. Okay, whoop, it doesn't need an action. And then inside the form, we're going to have a couple form groups. In Bootstrap, you want your inputs and labels wrapped in a form group div. Now, I'm going to use an input group because I want to have that money sign to the left of the actual input. So what we'll do is have a class of input-group. And inside here, we're going to have a span with the class of input group add-on. So this is where the money sign is going to go. So I'm going to put that $sign right in the middle there. And then after the span, we'll have our actual input, which will have a type of text. And let's give it a class of form control, which styles the Bootstrap input, gives it some padding, makes it a block level element. We're going to give it an ID of amount so that we can grab onto it in our JavaScript. And then we're going to give it a placeholder of loan amount. Okay, so we'll save that, and there we go. We have our first input. Actually, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to make these number inputs, not text. That way we can only put numbers in. So let's copy the form group. So this whole div right here. And we'll paste another one in, and this one is going to be the interest. So we're going to change the money sign to a %sign, and then we'll change the ID to interest, and then we'll change the placeholder to interest. Oops. All right. Next thing we want is the repayment years. I'm going to go ahead and save this. So we want repayment years. Now that's not going to be an input group. So let's just go right under this form group and create another one. Okay, so we don't need the input group, we don't need the span, all we need is the actual input. So we'll copy that one, and we'll change this to, let's change this to years, ID of years, and then in the placeholder we'll just say, well, let's say years to repay. That sounds a little better. Okay, so we'll save that. Now we have our 3 fields. Now what we want to do is put our submit button. So we're going to put another form group. And we're going to have an input. This is going to have a type of submit. And you can see how much easier Emmet makes this. I hope you guys have Emmet installed. So value, we're going to say calculate. And then let's give this a class, some Bootstrap classes. So BTN, we're going to do BTN-dark to make it a dark color, and then BTN-block to make it a block level button that goes all the way across. So we'll save, and there we go. All right, so the next thing we want to do is go underneath the form. Now our loader will go here, but we're not going to do that just yet. So we'll say loader here. All right, and then we want our results. Okay, so this will be the results, which when we complete our application, we're going to want it to, we're not going to want them to show until we calculate, but for now, they're going to show all the time until we get this working. All right, now you can choose to show your results however you want. I'm going to choose to show them in input fields that are disabled, that we can't actually edit. All right, so let's see, I'm going to copy all of these divs. I'm going to grab, actually we'll just grab the first one here. So this form group. Now we don't need a wrap, we don't need a form tag because we're not actually submitting a form. We just need the inputs to display the data. All right, so we're going to change this money sign to say monthly payment. Okay, and then for the input, we're going to change the ID to monthly dash payment, and we're going to change the type. Well, we can keep it at number, and then placeholder, we're not going to need a placeholder. What we're going to need is a disabled attribute. All right, so we want to say disabled. So if we save that, now you can see it's an input form, but we can't do anything with it. It's just for output. Okay, I also want to put an H5 at the top here, and we'll say results, and then let's also wrap this whole thing in a div with the ID of results. All right, so we want to wrap this around. Let's see, it'll go right under the form group div, which is right here. All right, so let's save that. Now I want to push this down a little bit. So this results, this div right here, I'm gonna give it a class. Let's give it a class of PT. So this is a padding top class. We'll do PT4, and that'll push it down. Okay, so after monthly payment, we're gonna want the total payment. So I'm gonna copy this form group right here, which ends here. So we'll grab that, paste that in, and this will be the total payment. So we'll change the ID to total payment, and that should be good. Next, we want the total interest. So under the form group, paste it in again, and this will be total interest. And we just want to change the ID. Okay, and then that should do it. Let's save, and there we go. I guess what we could do is put the HTML for the loader and then just comment it out. So for this, it's going to be really easy. We just want a div with the class. Actually, let's give it an ID of loading. And then inside here, we want our image, and it's going to have a source of it's in the IMG folder, and then loading.gif or GIF. Okay, so if we save that, it's going to show it, but we don't want that to be displayed, or we don't even want this to be working yet, so let's comment this out. And save. So now we can't see that. Now the last thing we want to do is make sure we include our app.js script, which we haven't done, so we're going to put this at the bottom here. We'll say script, and we want this to have a source of app.js. All right, and just to test it out, we'll go over here to app.js, and we'll just say alert1 and save, and you can see that that loads. Good. All right, so let's save this, and then in the next video we're going to start to add our functionality. We want to add an event listener onto this button and calculate our stuff here. All right, so I will see you in the next video.